Exactly. So welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Dominioni. I'm MBA 2018 and I have the pleasure of hosting this presentation with my colleague Léa Padlou, as well as several key alumni leaders and HEC International Office Directors in Asia. It is our very first Booster Network in regional webinar series, and there has been tremendous interest. So thanks to all of you for your presence. Note that this session is recorded. HEC Alumni was ranked #1 network in the world, a great recognition to the strength and potential of our community. We all chose HEC as a school that would boost our career, and creating connections is often the best way to start. This is also something Léa and I have experienced ourselves, first working in recruitment of students for HEC and traveling around the world to meet candidates and alumni. And now as part of the network team for HEC Alumni, we often have people come up to us saying, can you help me connect? So we came up with this idea to do webinars on specific regions to give you an introduction to some of the main HEC key stakeholders. And we're delighted to start with this one around Asia Pacific. There will be more on Europe, Central and South Asia, Americas, Africa. Our hope is to go around the world every year. So before we go into our presentation, we want to know more about you. You'll notice that your mics are off, but we invite you to use the chat box. First, can I please ask you to write your name, class, and country of residence in the chat box, please? So use the chat box to share your name, country of residence, and class to give us an idea of the variety. India, Singapore, Lebanon, France, India, Singapore, France, Qatar, China, going really fast, Thailand, UK, Hong Kong, Korea, Netherlands, Germany. Wow, so many countries. Canada, I saw the US, Malaysia. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being here. So today is a brief overview. After a brief overview of HEC Alumni Services, our objective is to introduce you, thanks to our alumni leaders and international offices, to several countries in Asia Pacific. What is this not? Unfortunately, we don't promise a job at the end of the session. We won't cover South and Central Asia, which is another session, nor can we answer very specific individual questions. However, we want this to be an overview of the region so that you have a better understanding of the markets, whether it is for a job or for business, and that you know who to contact to take the conversation further after this session. Now, can I also ask you to take a few seconds to share with us in the chat box what you're hoping to get from this session? This will help us shape future sessions like these, and we'll also be sending you a feedback form. So in the chat box, can you also share what you're hoping to get from this session? Better know the business market, understand the network better to know how to approach, FMCG activities, connect with alumni, overview of the region, potential contacts to reach out, tips on the job market, networking events, contacts, get more involved in the alumni network, expand my network. Great, perfect. So we really hope this will give you some answers. Before we go into our country specifically, a quick reminder of some of the HEC alumni services that are available to you. You can find events and contacts on the HEC Alumni website. HEC Alumni hosts many events which don't only happen in Paris, and we recently, for example, had over 170 webinars. And through the directory online, you can reach people per class or name among the 60,000 alumni around the world, or in specific sectors via the professional clubs or the international chapters on the network page. Remember to log in to get full access to the contacts, and remember to also update your contact information. This really makes a difference for a network. HEC Life Project is the new name for our career services, which is the idea that HEC Alumni wants to be there at every step of your life project. with three main focuses: building your project, being inspired to better innovate, and fulfilling your full potential. So you'll find a range of events and online workshops around these, and you also have access to job boards or the HEC Pulse mentoring platform. And finally, a reminder that we're able to do this thanks to those who pay their memberships, whether the Infinity Pass or the annual membership. So if you haven't subscribed yet and you can, please consider it or contact your team to discuss. And make sure you also check out the new HEC Stories magazine, as well as videos and podcasts, including in English. And there's more on hecstories.fr. So now let's get into the Asia-Pacific part of our presentation. There are over 4,500 alumni who are members of the Asia-Pacific networks on HEC Alumni, a large part of our overseas community with 13 international alumni groups. Today we have with us Alumni Chapter Presidents and Office Directors. So we have China with us, we have Hong Kong, we have Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, and Taiwan. We will also share names of contacts in other countries at the end, and we'll do our best to take your questions if we have time. So let's start with our first chapter.
And I am currently chairman and CEO of a corporate service group called CDP Group. My company is specializing in HR services and the corporate services. So I will introduce the chapter Shanghai. As you know, Shanghai is the biggest city in China, also the financial center in China. So we have a quite large alumni group. So officially, I did that with Guillaume. Guillaume is my VP. On the email list, we have about 529 plus alumni on the email distribution list. But in China, we are also using the WeChat group. In the WeChat group 1 plus 2, we have about 600 plus participants. So I think in Shanghai and the surrounding area, we have somewhere around 550 to 560 alumni altogether. Okay. Shanghai, in terms of the landscape, the market landscape, because Shanghai, is a city famous for its roots or its connection with France. In Shanghai, there's some area we call it French Quarter. It was it used to be the French areas before the 1949. So there are still lots of influence from French culture, and also because of the size of the market, and then also the business, the overall size of the economy. There are many currently many French business operating in Shanghai, and with lots of headquarters. Just name a few companies like L'Oreal's and LVMH, etc. So there are quite, besides the HEC community, there are quite many French people living in Shanghai. Okay, so as you know, from the size of the student body, China is being the largest feeder country for international students of HEC.
We will be sharing slides. All the chapters have prepared slides with a lot of information, so we will be sharing all of those with you.
Great. So hi everyone, I'm graduated from the MBA HEC 97. Before this, I was a professional volleyball player, and I was so happy by everything that I learned during my HEC school year. So I arrived in South China 6 years ago, and with Olivier, so we are co-chair of the South China chapter. We have 90 alumni here. We organize between 4 and 6 events. And so we organize, let's say, like internal events, and also we are providing support for HEC Paris, which is developing a project with the SUSTEC, so which is a technology university in Shenzhen. Beside our network, we are also engaged in many charity or solidarity initiatives. We are in very close contact with the French consulate in Guangzhou. And we also help to provide masks following the COVID-19 issue for around 70 to 100 million masks to France on a charity basis. Most of the people, most of the alumni who are in Shenzhen are working in the trading and also information technology. And in terms of local tips, of course, speaking Mandarin is a plus. And this is also great to be in that region, since we're in the middle of the Greater Bay Area, which is developing between Hong Kong, Macau, Zhuhai, and Shenzhen. And of course, the more you have an expertise in a specific domain, the more you have chance to get into the Chinese market here in South China. So at any time, any stage, we'll be happy to welcome you, Olivier and myself. Don't hesitate to give us any, send us any message if you want to enjoy South China.
Hong Kong. So without getting too much into political update, or I would say economic update, I mean, it's we would be lying to say that Hong Kong has not had a bit of a roller coaster ride over the last year. So everything that I tell you will be based in this context in terms of what's happening in the region. So before I get into the detail, first of all, it's great to be connected to all of you, and it's great, and I really thank the HEC community for letting us have those kind of events to be able to connect all together. So my name is Estelle. I'm the new chapter president since the early July. Actually, we had a changeover. We animate a community of around 700 members, and that's, I would say, the broader alumni community. So not just people that are actually based in Hong Kong, but also a lot of the alumni community that transits through Hong Kong for business reasons. The Bureau has about 10 members. You have also Moira, who's on the call as well, who's one of the Bureau members. And in terms of events, we generally tend to organize things with different frequencies. So we have monthly social drinks that are organized the last Thursday of every month, and this is mostly for professionals. We have events at the weekends, probably a few a year. This is mostly to gather families around the table. And we also have a few what we call learning expeditions, 2 to 4 events a year, that are much more focused on a business or a career theme. Moira has been very instrumental in setting up something new recently, which is what we call the Zoom calls, that are mostly targeted at the student community to make sure that they connect through the tough times of COVID. And if you want to have more details on those, I would suggest you contact her directly, because she's really been spearheading that effort. Now, in terms of market landscape and tips for Hong Kong per se, so I'm just going to share with you a few statistics that are coming out of the Census and Statistics Department of Hong Kong. So, you know, pretty valid numbers. I think, you know, it's fair to say that a lot of the discretionary sectors have suffered tremendously in Hong Kong, not just obviously because of the COVID situation, but in Hong Kong, it started more than a year ago because of the protests. So obviously, anything that has to do with the accommodation sector is down double-digit and significantly down. And similarly for anything that has to do with restaurants and retail sales. So obviously, if you guys are thinking of getting a job currently in the hospitality industry or in the retail industry in Hong Kong, which is a big employer, I'm not going to lie, things are going to be pretty tough right now. On the other end of the spectrum, some other sectors are still relatively okay, yet not booming. That would be banking. As you guys all know, Hong Kong is a big financial center, but obviously, given the latest news on the political agenda, there's very little visibility right now as to whether Hong Kong is going to maintain a financial leadership position in the region or not. And frankly, none of us have a crystal ball and are able to know what's going to happen over the next 5, let alone 10 years. So if you want to network in the region, couple of tips. We have a number of groups that you can connect through. So we have, obviously, I run a regular mailing list. And so I generally tend to send all of the information that's pertaining to the network to the group of 700 people that we animate. So if you guys want to be updated, please ping me an email so I'll put you on the list. We also have a Facebook group called the HEC Hong Kong Alumni, which you can connect to. We have a LinkedIn group called the HEC Hong Kong Group. We have 2 groups on WeChat, one for the alumni generally and one specifically for the MBAs. And we also have 2 groups on WhatsApp, but these are for the moment reserved to the bureau. That's how we communicate with each other. So that's it for Hong Kong, and all of the contact details will be shared with you after this presentation, and we look forward to connecting with you. Thank you.
If you haven't received the link and you have registered and you want to make sure you receive the slides afterwards, I've put my email address in the chat box. So you can always email us to make sure that you will receive all these slides afterwards. As we said, our alumni leaders have sent a lot of information that we would like to share with you.
My name is Philippe Sin. I'm the president of the Korean chapter. I'm a graduate of the Grande École Promotion 89, so it's been a while. I'm a lawyer. I work for one of the larger Korean law firms here. Most of the cases I work on have to do with foreign investment into Korea. What about the HEC community here? I mean, talking after China, I realize how small Korea is. You count in hundreds, we count in tens or dozens. So we only have about 50 alumni. It's pretty diverse, but I would say that the vast majority of the alumni in Korea are MBA graduates. These MBA graduates still tend to be rather young. You will find a few in senior executive positions, but not many. Which means that they are still professionally, they are still mobile. They change jobs fairly easily. The other trait of the alumni community here is that, well, of course, because they mostly went to MBAs. Before going to the MBAs, they graduated from a Korean college. So that creates some competing loyalties with HEC, but you know, we can something we can overcome. In terms of social activities, because we have only 50 people, that means that gathering all of the 50 people at the same time is almost impossible. So whenever we have events, we will have between 15 and at most 20 people, which is not a lot, I agree. So usually we will have 3 or 4 dinners per year. And from time to time, when one of the HEC professors visit Korea, we will have an impromptu dinner with him. So if you're looking for a job in Korea, well, Korea is a very, it's a very industrialist country. And one thing that has been going on very strong for many years is the high-tech industry. So there are a lot of startups, specifically more and more in terms of IT, anything related to AI and internet in general. So if you're a foreigner and you want to look for a job in Korea, first of all, you really have to make the effort of learning Korean. Otherwise, you will not go very far. Or if you don't speak the language, you better have a very good specialty that is hard to find in Korea. For instance, you may be very good in AI and in a certain area of AI, in that case, you can afford not to learn the language because people will come to you. The other thing that you have to realize is that the immigration rules in Korea are very strict. So unless your spouse happens to be Korean, or unless you are sent by a foreign company into Korea to manage their local subsidiary, it's difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's very difficult for an entrepreneur to come to Korea and start a business. It is possible, but there are a number of rules that are not always easy to satisfy. How do you market in Korea? Well, it's not very different from other countries. The one thing that you start with is you must have a business card. If you're a student, you don't have a job, so it's maybe more difficult. But then nevertheless, you have to make a business card which will say which promotion you are and when you will graduate and your areas of interest. Also, when you talk to people, you have to drop names because it's important to show that you know people or that there are acquaintances that are common with the person you are talking to. So most of the events will be social. So when you first meet someone, it will be at a social event and you'll have a few drinks and that's fine. But if you want the connection to evolve into something more solid, you will have to meet with that person later on and have a face-to-face meeting, which will be much more constructive. When you talk to Koreans, you can talk about anything, and they sometimes tend to be very inquisitive, but that's okay. It's part of the culture here. My slide mentions golf because golf is a very big thing here. Every professional will play golf. Well, maybe not in IT, but if you're not in IT, if you're in consulting or in audit or in law or what have you, you will have to show some interest in golf. So that's it for me. If you want to know more about Korea, don't hesitate to contact me. You have my email there, or you also can contact my colleagues, Nakun or Unju. Thank you.
Malaysia is a dwarf. We are only 16 members. And I must say that the chapter has been very absent for quite many years. And that in the last 14 years where I've been in Malaysia, there has been something like 3 lunch in all these years. So I'm trying to, I just took the position of chairman of the chapter, and I hope to make it alive again. Now I lost the, well, yeah, okay. So, so the chapter activities, quasi non-existent so far, and I'm very interested to hear all what you're doing in the other countries. No social engagement, no solidarity initiatives. Market landscape, Malaysia is a country of 30 million inhabitants and growing quite quickly. There were 10 million at the time of the independence, so 15 million, so they doubled, and it was in 57. It's a country which was formerly under British rule, so they speak English, most of them, which makes everyday life very easy and business life quite easy, because apart from being a Muslim country, most of their legal system is English law, as people may know it in Hong Kong and other places, which means that it's relatively safe from a business point of view, and that people, well, the business community is not finding it difficult to make business in Malaysia. It should be noted that Malaysia is very much, well, is still depending on oil and oil prices. 50% of their earnings are more or less related to oil business. So the present configuration is not really good, and well, we all hope it's going to change in the future. But the present economical landscape is not very good. The type of businesses in which the HEC community is very varied. Okay, it could be any kind of businesses. Malaysia has been quite successful in moving their economy upwards. In the last 20 years, they have been seen as doing very, very good performance. Nowadays, it's a bit more difficult because they have a difficulty to go to the higher level. They had a target which was Malaysia 2020, where they wanted to become a developed country and not no more belonging to the developing countries. And it has been pushed back to 10 years now, to 2030. The level of education is probably the most difficult thing to overcome, to become like Korea, for instance, which everybody is trying to do in the region. Well, now in terms of tips to network and in Malaysia, it's relatively simple. Again, because there is no language barrier, you can contact people very easily, and they are very open-minded, and they will definitely attend your queries. Okay. Now, for the French community and for the HEC community as a whole, the main contact are the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Then, of course, there are all the different type of expat association, being business or non-business. Like locally, we have something called IFM, which is a non-business association, but UFE also. But of course, you can contact me whenever you feel like, if you have a question, I'll be very happy to help you in Malaysia.
Thank you very much, Henri.
So, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks a lot for organizing this talk today. 5 minutes to speak about Singapore and what is, the current situation is very short. I'm going to try to give you the headlines, and after that, you have my email at the bottom of this slide. You can connect with me as well on LinkedIn, and I do my very best, to be in touch with you guys after. So just to speak very shortly about me, I'm in Singapore for 5 years. I'm the chapter president for 2 years. We have a board of 7 members. I've been in Hong Kong for 3 years before, and in Shanghai 6 months during my gap year. So needless to say, I love Asia and I love Singapore. So speaking about Singapore and Singapore chapter, it's a very dynamic chapter. In terms of alumni, we are number 3 in Asia. We are chasing Hong Kong in the official numbers, and the flow in Singapore is extremely dynamic. If you look at the Mercer ranking, Singapore has been ranked top 1 destination for expats over the last 5 years. So, of course, the flow of expats is extremely strong. So are the HECM alumni coming to Singapore, but as well coming back. In Singapore, the alumni are not only the French-speaking, they are the Singaporean, they are the Chinese, they are the Indian, they are the Southeast Asian. And that's why the community is growing in diversity at the image of Singapore. Singapore is a hub for Southeast Asia. And just before that, we're speaking about Malaysia. And if Malaysia is a dwarf, maybe for the alumni community, Singapore is a little dot. You know, we are 1% of the community for alumni. We are a territory, the size roughly of Paris, 720 square meters. We are, how do we say that? One of the richest countries in the world, but it's a state country. Now, you will never see a city that dynamic, and you could easily compare that, you know, to the city in the US, compare that to Shanghai, compare that to Hong Kong. The pace in Singapore is extremely strong, and the image, which was before that Singapore is kind of, you know, of a slow pace, a nice place to have children country, has changed a lot over the last 10 to 15 years for the expat. Singapore now is #1 for the fintech, is challenging Hong Kong for the banking. In many industries, import, export, luxury, Singapore has become this hub. What is it to work in Singapore right now? It's tough, like in Hong Kong, because of the visa, because it's election year. So on Friday, they're going to re-elect the parliament. And during this year, the visas are very, very tight. When you add that, the COVID, clearly Singapore is bleeding visas and work passes right now. And, you know, it's no secret, clearly, it's tough to find a job in Singapore. And as of today, it's impossible to come to Singapore. You cannot get in unless you have a special approval. So for those of you looking to find a job in Singapore, it's one of the nicest projects we'll have, but you have to be patient until, you know, the borders will reopen and Singapore government will be more open-minded as well to let people come, network, find a job. So it's going to be a long run for all of you. What are the profiles and what should you look at when you come to Singapore? Singapore could be called Asia for Dummies. Like in Malaysia, we were under you know, British rule, so everyone speaks perfect English. Chinese is a plus. It's not necessary, but it's, you know, a nice to have. You should expect a regional role. Singapore clearly is, you know, the gateway, the hub for all Southeast Asia, with you know, frequent traveling to Malaysia, Indonesia, but as well, you know, Vietnam, Thailand, and so on. So, you know, you will have this kind of companies relocating now some businesses they had in Hong Kong or in some other countries to Singapore. So as soon as COVID is gone, you will see Singapore will be extremely dynamic. What have we done here, you know, to feed this dynamism? So we have done monthly gathering. We have done a lot of activities in partnership with the other schools. So the French Grande École, but as well as the local schools. So we have done some lunch, some dinners, some talks, some webinars. We have launched 2 months ago the French Grande École in Singapore, and this one is now gathering over 1,400 French Grande École alumni in Singapore, and it's a huge help for your network, for your business, and if you come. So the next step for you guys, as I said, networking, finding a job, it's something that you need to prepare remotely. You need to prepare by connecting, by getting in touch with everyone. And as soon as possible, you need to come here to find a job. The market is very competitive here, but you can find a job very quickly, like you could as well, you know, in Hong Kong. The visa can be processed in 1 week, 2 weeks. It's very dynamic. We just hope that, you know, honestly, we just hope for the borders to be open, and then, you know, it should restart extremely fast here. Okay, so don't hesitate to connect if you have any question. I'd be happy to help you.
My name is CK Chen, and I'm the chapter president in Taiwan. There are around 120 HEC alumni for Taiwan chapter, and we estimate around two-thirds of that amount is based in Taipei, and the rest is scattering around the other parts of Taiwan or work overseas. Taiwan chapter organize a quarterly gathering for drinks or dinners. Quite often we hold events with other French communities or schools to broaden the connections. We are a relatively small community, so everyone tends to know everyone if you stay longer. People usually use instant chat app to connect with each other. Line is the most popular one instead of WhatsApp, and followed by FB messengers. But obviously, if you stay connect with the people outside of Taiwan, you tend to use WhatsApp or WeChat or other instant apps. Let me talk about the Taiwan market landscape. Taiwan is credited for a good life and work balance. It's a bit of a laid-back atmosphere compared to other major cities in Northeast Asia. Taiwan has a very relatively good healthcare system that benefits not just locals, but also foreigners in Taiwan. So if you have families, Taipei should be a very good choice for you. And most, I should say, alumni are based in Taipei. The country is good in the information and semiconductor industry. So in addition to the finance or consulting or big multinational companies that I should say alumni usually work for, many alumni also work in the technology industry. In the recent years, many global companies set up a research and develop center in Taiwan, as many of them consider Taiwan as a place with good engineer supply with reasonable cost. With the growing employment of those companies, they also tend to start hiring more general positions, for example, finance, logistics, back office, support, etc., etc. But traditionally, Taiwan has a very vibrant SME or small, medium-sized enterprises communities, and over 90% of the working population are employed by SMEs. But the downside is that most SME do not hire foreigners, or many are not interested to apply working visa for you if you are not holding the citizenship here. Most business activities are based in north part of Taiwan, but if you like to travel around, the east part of Taiwan is a place you definitely want to visit. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Taiwan manages relatively well, and we never locked down any cities here. It's actually quite easy for foreigners to receive working visa in Taiwan, as long as you find any employers willing to apply that for you. Normally, it takes less than a month to receive the working visa here in Taiwan. And Taiwan also has a special visa called Employment Go Visa, which is particularly useful for those entrepreneurs or professionals who want to set up your business based in Taiwan. If you want to know more details, you can contact me and I can share more information on that. And generally speaking, most young people speak some English, but if you want to stay long in Taiwan, it's highly recommended to learn some Mandarin here. If you have any questions, you can contact me or reach up in here, who is a chapter vice president in Taiwan. And you can find both of our email address at the bottom of this slide. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone.
I'm Bernard Delmas. I'm an old presence. I have a very long presence in Japan, more than 35 years, but I'm a young president starting very recently of HEC Alumni Japan chapter, which is also a chapter with more than, let's say, 300 alumni. We have probably more registered, but we have people who have came back in their country of origin to France. So currently we should have 300 plus in working in Japan today, living in Japan. Japan, I'm not going to talk too much about Japan, except to say that it's an Asian country in Northeast Asia. It used to be the second largest economy in the world. Now is the third, but still is a very important power in house, in industry, in technology. It's also a marvelous country for tourism. In the past years, we had a boom of foreigners visiting Japan. With the COVID, that has been put on in halt, but it will start, I'm sure, again very, very soon. As far as the chapter itself, before the COVID, we used to have 6 events per year, usually a big gathering of not all the 300, but many alumni participate. And we have corporate HEC corporate ambassadors, which are working actively to promote HEC school, grande école, MBA, and so on. And we have every year at least 10 new alumni candidates for going to the grande école or the MBA. That is very important to continue to grow. We have also, let's say, a long-standing partnership with very important Japanese universities, very famous Keio, Tokyo University, and Hitotsubashi, which is very famous in economy. For the market, let's say, maybe I would like just add that Japan is a homeland of many global corporations. Japan economy has been rising in the early days of the 20th century. Obviously, there was destruction during the wars, but those large companies, you know them, like Toyota, Canon, and so on, they are now becoming global companies, and there are obviously big opportunities to work in those companies everywhere in the world. I am myself, after a long career with Michelin as a head of Japan and even other Asian countries, as a head of those affiliates of Michelin Group, I am now a board member of Nissan Motors, which is part of an alliance with French Renault and another Japanese company called Mitsubishi, and as well in relationship with the Mercedes Group. So it's a very complex alliance, but showing the nature of today's Japanese economy, which became very international and now very global through those big corporations. At the same time, Japan is a very big local market with many SMEs, and the French companies especially has been able to work in all the domains. The French Chamber of Commerce, by example, have more than 100 years of history, and more than 600 companies member, which is the largest European chamber, which shows a strong French presence in Japan in many domains. Local tips for working in Japan and develop his network. It's probably the most important, like it has been said for Korea or Taiwan. If you want to work and stay long in this country, you need to manage Japanese language. It's very important. Now, for the contacts, and we will be delighted with Junko Adachi, which is the director of the HEC representative office. You have the address here. And myself, you can contact us, and we'll be delighted to answer your question and help you to find your way to Japan. So thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, everyone, and our sincere thanks to our alumni and presenters today and the international offices for their support. If Charles from Beijing is still with us, let us know. And I also wanted to mention that it is impossible to share everything in just 1 hour. So we will be sending you the slides prepared by each chapter with further information. And make sure you keep an eye on hecalumni.fr for upcoming events in those countries. You can also reach out individually to be added to WhatsApp groups or newsletters. And I've put in the chat box also the link to the international chapters. It's often the best way to receive news from the different chapters. They might not all accept individual connections on LinkedIn, as you were able to see, but make sure you connect through the international chapters and go to events if you can. And of course, use your common sense when reaching out to our busy alumni and respect their time. So I'm gonna have a look if, I'm not sure Charles is with us, but we will be sending you, as we said, all the slides, and you also have here other chapter presidents in Asia Pacific. So these are your contacts in other countries: Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, Indonesia. So to wrap up, and from experience, may I highlight that the network is as valuable as the amount of effort you put into nurturing it. And in order to meet your expectations even further on local information, we're going to be sending you a quick survey. So we're going to put the link in the chat box for you to fill it out after this presentation. And you can always reach out as well to Leah or myself. On this note, this brings us to the end of our Booster HEC Network in Asia presentations. We have 1 minute left. So if you do have an urgent question, you can put it in the chat box and we will either answer it now or we will get back to you by email. So feel free to ask questions in the chat box if you want further information. Make sure you fill out the survey that we are sending now in the chat box and we will send to you with the slides. And this brings us to the end of our Booster HEC Network in Asia presentations. Many thanks again to all our speakers, and we look forward to hosting our next regional webinar series on Europe in September. So stay tuned. Here are our contacts. Feel free to reach out to Leah or myself. Again, thank you to all your speakers. I don't think I see any questions, but make sure you fill out the survey as well to share more with us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Have a nice evening. Bye. A nice day.
Thank you for organizing. Take care, everyone.